Hi everybody, it's Catie Harris here, and in this video we are going to explore a really powerful tool that helps us to understand and rebuild the terrain of when breast cancer occurs, right? So what we're going to go over is the prodrome of breast cancer, because breast cancer doesn't start overnight, right? It begins with a damaged biochemical environment, one that is low in plasmalogens, stressed out mitochondria, impaired detox systems, and inflammation that basically goes unnoticed until a tumor appears. So traditional treatment removes the tumor, right? Your chemo radiation, but it doesn't fix the terrain in which allowed the breast cancer to take hold in the first place. So how do we know what that terrain is? So this is where we're using biochemistry to understand, basically how to create an inhospitable terrain for breast cancer. So what we're going to do is we use a special test called the ProdromeScan, and the ProdromeScan identifies the root biochemical imbalances that existed before the cancer. And then we're going to look to understand how chemo and radiation may have worsened those imbalances, even if it was necessary. I'm not against chemo and radiation, so I don't want that to come out. But they don't necessarily make the terrain, the environment of your body better. They make it worse. So we need to rebuild those systems to prevent recurrence and optimize recovery. So this is a lipid-based test. It measures the health of your cell membranes, mitochondria, and long-term resilience to chronic diseases like cancer and even dementia, multiple sclerosis. There's a lot of other disease states that the ProdromeScan looks at, and it's all based on the lipids, right? And you can't get this with other tests. The ProdromeScan is very, very unique in what it offers, the information that it offers. So disease occurs in an environment that is made up of broken down lipids, low plasmalogens, poor mitochondrial function, and a weak detox capacity. So this is going to help us to see the terrain and how to repair it. And we're going to go over one of my clients' tests. So she has breast cancer, and we're going to talk about her. So there are prodromes, and what's a prodrome? A prodrome is basically, that terrain, the environment in which something can grow. What conditions existed that allowed for breast cancer to take hold in somebody? And we actually know the answer to this. Okay, it's not a mystery. There's a lot of really, really great science out there that tells us when the terrain is ripe for breast cancer to take hold. And what we know is, and maybe you've never heard of these terms, and that's okay, we're going to go over them, but the terrain that makes it possible for breast cancer to take hold is having a low elongase 5, low phosphatidylcholine plasmalogens, elevated lipid peroxidase, high levels of omega-6 fatty acids relative to omega-3, low sphingomyelins, and high ceramides. So what does that mean? It sounds like gibberish, right? So we're going to go over that as we go over this test. So this patient is a 52-year-old female. She has a history of estrogen-positive breast cancer, receptor-positive breast cancer, previously treated with chemotherapy and radiation. She is now in remission. She has persistent complaints of fatigue, cognitive slowing, mild anxiety, difficulty maintaining energy levels, and concern about cancer recurrence. Because anybody who's had cancer, this is one of their number one fears, is that it will come back. And how do we create it so that it can't come back? And that's possible. That's what we're trying to do with the ProdromeScan. She's currently not on hormone therapy due to her cancer history, but is seeking non-hormonal cellular repair to optimize her health and prevent disease recurrence. So the ProdromeScan was performed to evaluate the integrity of her lipid membrane systems, mitochondrial function, inflammatory balance, and overall biochemical terrain. So we can do this on everybody, and I would strongly, strongly recommend getting a test like this. Because it's not just cancer, it's neurodegenerative diseases and all kinds of Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementias, multiple sclerosis, ovarian cancer, breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, colon cancer. There's a prodrome for all of them. And as we go through the series, we'll go through the different prodromes. So the question is, and always is, will the cancer recur? So this is some of the results. This is one of the most foundational markers on the ProdromeScan. This is the ethanolamine phospholipids, and they're a critical class of lipids that make up the structural core of your brain, your nerve cells, and your mitochondria, and your immune system membranes. So there's a couple different categories here. We're not going to go too in depth because it's very intense biochemically, but you have your total ethanolamine phospholipids and plasmalogens. Okay, so they include their major structural phospholipids, and plasmalogens are an antioxidant lipid that protects the cells from oxidative damage. And then also there's the DHA and EPA, which are different types of the phospholipids. So in this patient, the phosphatidylethylamines, the PEs, are extremely low. They're severely low, and the plasmalogens are mildly low. So 29% is not horrible, but it's not great. We'd like to see that over the 50 percentile. So what does it mean? What it means is that these values tell us that the membrane health and integrity are compromised, particularly in the mitochondria and the nervous system. So the phosphatidylethylamines are crucial for membrane curvature, mitochondrial fusion and fission, and cell signaling, and low levels contribute to oxidative stress, mitochondrial dysfunction, and a cellular environment that favors cancer development. So this is bad. Okay, so from a breast cancer perspective, low ethanolamine lipids signal that cell membranes were vulnerable to mutation, inflammation, and poor detox long before the tumor formed. And then your DHA EPAs, these are moderately low. The omega-3 fatty acids like DHA, they're not being incorporated effectively into membrane lipids. So they have, this is going to affect your anti-inflammatory signaling, neuroprotection, and membrane fluidity, which are all key defenses against cancer and cognitive decline. So why does this matter in breast cancer? So DHA-rich plasmalogens, they eliminate free radicals and they support healthy estrogen metabolism. When you have low DHA, phosphatidylethylamine, and plasmalogen levels, the body is less able to protect the cells from mutation during oxidative stress. So, and especially like radiation. Radiation is going to cause oxidative stress and inflammation, right? So you need a way to protect the cells while you're going through this. So how do we rebuild them? How do we rebuild ethanolamine lipid levels and DHA incorporation? So we use a very specific precursor called ProdromeNeuro. ProdromeNeuro provides precursors specifically for these ethanolamine phospholipids and plasmalogen synthesis. It supports what we call peroxisome activation, mitochondrial health, membrane repair. And then other things that you can do aside from taking ProdromeNeuro, which is the big thing, gentle exercise, fasting, and taking supplements like astaxanthin, berberine. These can help improve synthesis and integration. So low ethanolamine lipids are one of the clearest biochemical signatures of a terrain that favors cancer. It doesn't mean you will get cancer. It's kind of like, I like to use the analogy of a blue sky. If you have a blue sky, it's not going to rain, right? If you have clouds in the sky, there's possibility it could rain. If you have really, really dark clouds in the sky, there's a strong possibility that it will rain, but there's still the possibility that a wind will come and blow them past and it doesn't rain. So this test is non-diagnostic. It does not mean that you have cancer, you will have cancer, you'll ever have cancer. It's just telling us if the environment is ripe for cancer to take hold. And the other thing, the good news is that all of these markers are fixable. We can replenish our phospholipids and our plasmalogens using the Prodrome products. So we can replenish what chemo and stress have depleted and restore the body's natural ability to prevent recurrence. Okay, so the next section is phospholipids and plasmalogens made out of choline. All right, so the choline phospholipids are another essential class of membrane lipids with deep connections to liver detoxification, brain function, and hormone metabolism. They are especially important for women recovering from estrogen-sensitive cancers because they play a big role in methylation and estrogen clearance. Okay, so in this patient, we have severely low total phosphatidylcholine and low, but not severely low, choline plasmalogens. Okay, it indicates that she's got a choline depletion, which can impact lipid transport, estrogen metabolism, bile acid production, memory, and mood regulation. So when choline is depleted, your body struggles to methylate and detox properly. You have to have choline. And this is particularly concerning in breast cancer. So you want to make sure that those levels are up. And then they break those phospholipids into DHA and EPA as well. So these are all low. The membranes throughout the body, including the liver and brain, are deficient in anti-inflammatory DHA. And this impairs cell signaling, detox, and cognitive function. And this matters because healthy phosphatidylcholine levels are needed for processing and excreting estrogens. Low DHA phosphatidylcholine levels reduce membrane resilience and increase the risk of chronic inflammation and recurrence. So, especially with chemo and radiation, if you have chemo radiation, your choline lipid reserves are often wiped out. So this is something that while you're even before chemo radiation, you need to stock up on phosphatidylcholine. During chemo radiation, really, really important, and afterwards as well. So how do we improve this? With one of our prodrome products called ProdromeGlia. ProdromeGlia is a targeted supplement, and actually the PC Plus, because that has the phosphatidylcholine. It'll replenish your choline plasmalogens, support detoxification, lipid repair, brain function. So you want the ProdromeGlia PC Plus. And then dietary choline. So you can get a certain amount of, the body will make a very small percentage of choline, but you can get it in the diet. Eggs, they have about 200, two eggs would have about 200 milligrams of phosphatidylcholine. The ProdromeGlia PC Plus has about 2,000 milligrams. So it's actually cheaper, easier, and more productive to take the ProdromeGlia PC Plus. And since choline is a methyl donor, we often pair this with methyl B12, methylfolate, and trimethylglycine, which is also known as betaine. So low choline phospholipids mean detox pathways are compromised, estrogen is not being cleared efficiently, and the brain may feel sluggish. But if you restore the system and give back hormonal intelligence, cellular resistance, metabolic flexibility, these are all critical for preventing cancer. Okay, next section on this test is dietary fatty acids. This tells us what fats are making it into your cell membrane. So these are the fatty acids that you eat. This is from your diet, not what the body makes. So how these are, this section reflects your recent dietary fat intake, how well your body is incorporating and processing fatty acids, and your ratio or balance of omega-3, 6, and 9. And these are the most important fatty acids. They make up 95% of your fatty acids. There's a couple of others, but they're not worth mentioning, and they're not measured on this test. So omega-9 to oleic acid was 15%, linoleic acid to omega-6, arachidonic acid to omega-6, and the DHA to omega-3. These are the ratios. The cell membranes are currently built with less than ideal ratios of fatty acids. Okay, these are all really low, and the omega-6 are moderately high. So relative to omega-3 or DHA. The arachidonic acid promotes inflammation when unbalanced, and it's also a little higher than what we want it to be. So this contributes to membrane instability, higher inflammatory signaling, and makes it easier for damaged cells to survive or mutate. And it's not something that we want in cancer, obviously. So cancer thrives in a pro-inflammatory environment. The more omega-6 and arachidonic acid, the more they dominate, the easier it is for inflammation and oxidative stress to persist. And a low DHA membrane reflects both dietary deficiency and poor incorporation into structural lipids. And that can affect everything from brain functioning to immune regulation. So how do we support this? So Prodrome Neuro. Okay, Prodrome Neuro is omega-3. It's your DHA omega-3. So you want to take Prodrome Neuro every day, every morning. And then you want to lower your omega-6. So where does omega-6 come from? Your seed oils, corn, soybean, safflower, sunflower. You want to reduce your use of those. This can be very difficult, especially if you go out to eat, because the seed oils are used in restaurants just constantly. So anything that you eat at a restaurant most likely was made with some sort of seed oil. So trying to avoid going out to dinner or going to restaurants that specifically state that they're not using seed oils. And instead you want to focus on healthy fats like olive oil, avocado, and grass-fed butter. Support lipid remodeling. So we're going to use the Prodrome Neuro and the Prodrome Glia, and then encourage healthy metabolism with exercise, fasting, mitochondrial nutrients like CoQ10 and acetyl L-carnitine. So this section gives us that snapshot of fatty acids in your cell membrane, and this particular one shows low DHA and high omega-6, which promotes inflammation and instability. So we can change the raw materials, we can rebuild healthier, more resilient cells, and reduce long-term risk of disease. All right, now here, these are, again, GTAs are well-known, gastric tract acids. They're very well-known, and these give us clues about what's happening in the kind of your gut-liver immune axis and play a massive role in long-term cancer risk. So GTAs are unique lipids that are derived from gut microbial activity and bile acid metabolism. They reflect gut health, liver function, and systemic anti-inflammatory capacity. So the GTAs actually not bad. So at 20%, 22%, it's not bad. We don't get really concerned until these are under 10%, but they are mildly low across the board, suggesting that there's a suboptimal gut microbiome, possible bile acid dysfunction, and reduced anti-inflammatory signaling from the gut. It's very common in your post-chemo patient. It's because chemotherapy, antibiotics, stress, and low dietary fiber will all impact this. So a dysfunctional gut-liver axis allows toxic estrogen metabolites, inflammatory compounds to recirculate, okay? Low GTA signal that your terrain is not yet resilient, even if the cancer is gone. So this is something that you want to work on. How can you work on this? Well, one of the Prodrome products that we use for GTAs is BDMC. This is a curcuminoid, and that curcuminoid, it's a type 3 curcuminoid that you rarely find in supplements. Most supplements have the first curcuminoid, which is very abundant, very cheap to access. The curcuminoid 3 is very potent, very anti-inflammatory, and very expensive to manipulate. So most supplements don't have it, but the BDMC, that's exactly what it is. It's curcuminoid, the third curcuminoid that you want. Other things that you can do a liver detox. So the Push Catch by Quicksilver Scientific is great. And using a postbiotic metabolite like Dr. Ohhira's postbiotics, butyrate, are really good. Incorporating fiber and bitter foods into your diet, and using the phosphatidylcholine from Prodrome Glia PC+. So those are all things that will help improve GTAs. This patient's iron is fine. It's on the lower side. I'd like to see it 90 to 120, but this might indicate some mild oxidative stress, mitochondrial stress, reduced oxygen delivery, so that the tissues need to be able to access oxygen, and iron is what helps that. But it is a double-edged sword. You don't want to have too little, but too much can cause oxidative stress. So if you have like thalassemia, anemia, that's usually too much accumulation of iron, and it causes other problems. So 90 to 120 is good for iron. So many breast cancer patients will have iron shifts, especially from chemo. And that it does play a really important role in regulation and energy restoration. You don't want to supplement blindly. You do want to kind of follow this because you don't want to have too much iron, and you really need that Goldilocks. So maybe test the iron every 3 to 6 months until it gets stable. You can do iron-rich foods like beef and leafy greens, but make sure you balance it out with your antioxidants like CoQ10, carnitine, and your B vitamins. And then address gut health because absorption matters more than intake. The GTAs in iron are terrain markers. They're not disease markers. Okay, they just show that the body is recovering from disruption and that you need better detox, better energy to prevent disease recurrence. All right, now the methyltransferase choline system, that's what this one is. So this shows you how well the body is managing methylation, which is a biochemical process that supports estrogen detoxification, DNA repair and gene regulation, neurotransmitter production, and glutathione recycling and antioxidative defense. It's especially important in cancer recovery because poor methylation leads to a buildup of toxic estrogen metabolites, DNA damage, and immune dysfunction, all the things that, we want to avoid. So what do we have here? Now we've seen these numbers. We saw the total phosphatidylethanolamine and total phosphatidylcholine in earlier. But they're low, and we knew that, but that adds stress onto the methyltransferase system. Homocysteine, now we normally say 7 to 10 is normal for homocysteine. Usually we're worried about a high homocysteine, but a low, really low homocysteine can also cause methylation issues. But for a cancer patient who's lipid depleted, our target is like 5 to 7. So this will give us active detox pathways, balanced neurotransmitter metabolism, and a stable cardiovascular protection. So while 7 isn't bad, it's a useful marker for showing the methylation is potentially strained but not failing. Our goal isn't to push it lower at all costs, but to support that system, avoid mega dosing to suppress it too much, and focus on that terrain repair. So the ceramides are normal to slightly elevated. These are involved in cell signaling and can promote insulin resistance. So if you have high level of ceramides, it's related to insulin resistance. So the other thing too here to know is that because the phosphatidylcholine is low, what the body does is it tries to make its own choline. And how does it do it? It starts to break down the sphingomyelins. And when the sphingomyelins start to break down, your ceramides increase. So when you have that, the low sphingomyelins, high ceramides in the presence of low phosphatidylcholine, that's basically the body cannibalizing itself. It's breaking down cells, it's breaking down sphingomyelins to create choline. So how do we solve this? We'll just take the ProdromeScan PC+, which is the phosphatidylcholine, or eat a dozen eggs a day. You just need to get more choline in your system to stop this from happening. Also, you want to take methylation nutrients, so methyl B12 and methylfolate, and then trimethylglycine, which is also known as betaine, will help this process. And then just reduced demand. You want to lower exposure to methylation draining factors such as alcohol, plastics. Not that any of us are actively eating plastics, but you're definitely getting them in your diet, whether you want them or not. Stress and synthetic estrogens. You want to avoid synthetic estrogens. So use binders and antioxidants to reduce that toxic load. So the bottom line here is the methylation system is strained, but it's still functional. It's being pushed hard to compensate for low membrane lipids, especially choline, and it's unsustainable long term. So we need to restore choline reserves, provide targeted B vitamin support, and reduce the burden on this pathway to promote a safe detox, better brain health, and long-term cancer protection. All right, mitochondrial function. Let's take a closer look at the mitochondrial function, which is one of the most essential categories on the ProdromeScan, especially for anyone who's had cancer. Mitochondria are your body's energy generators, but they also control cellular repair and regeneration, healthy cell death, known as apoptosis, immune surveillance, and even epigenetics signaling. So when mitochondria are damaged by inflammation, toxins, chemo, whatever, poor nutrition, your terrain shifts towards chronic fatigue, poor healing, and an increased cancer risk. So in this patient, the mitochondrial markers showed, pretty low linoleic and arachidonic acid. So what this means, so we saw these earlier, right? And those were the dietary, those were free floating fatty acids from dietary sources. When we're looking at linoleic acid, arachidonic acid, adrenic acid, these are membrane bound inside of the mitochondria. And you do want high levels of these. Okay, so these are phosphatidylethylenamines with specific fatty acids that are crucial for inner mitochondrial membrane health. Linoleic and arachidonic are severely depleted. This indicates that we have poor mitochondrial membrane structure, impaired electron transport chain efficiency, and a weak metabolic output. The third, which is adrenic acid, is preserved, which tells us that not all the lipid pools are damaged, but the overall energy is still struggling. Okay, so why does this matter? So cancer cells often shift into glycolysis, which is sugar burning, instead of healthy oxidative metabolism. And we know that is the Warburg effect. That's been around for decades. So when your mitochondria are underperforming, healthy cells are more vulnerable and cancerous cells are harder to kill. Chemo and radiation further damage mitochondrial membranes, and without rebuilding them, you get fatigue, brain fog, and long-term recurrence risk remains high. So how do we improve mitochondrial function? So your prodrome neuro supports phospholipid replenishment for intermembrane mitochondrial membranes. Your mitochondrial cofactors, which are CoQ10, acetyl L-carnitine, and alpha lipoic acid. And then you can do lifestyle activators like red light, which red light therapy penetrates through the mitochondria and boost biogenesis. Your PEMF, your pulsed electromagnetic field, stimulates mitochondrial output, and intermittent fasting and movement helps to build resilience. So this scan it reveals early mitochondrial breakdown, probably from cancer, but we can rebuild the system, and using the Prodrome products, we can end the mitochondrial cofactors. This is going to help significantly. All right, inflammation. So we saw this before with the total GTAs. Now we're adding in C-reactive protein. The C-reactive protein of 0.9, it's not alarming. We do like it below 1, but this is on the upper range of 1. It's pretty it's pretty common in anybody who's recovering from chemo, radiation, antibiotics, or high oxidative stress. It means that the fire's not raging, but the coals are still hot. And without intervention, this could smolder into disease again. So one of the things that we do to reduce inflammation is the BDMC. That's a really, really powerful way. The curcuminoid by the Prodrome series is the most powerful way to lower C-reactive protein really quickly. So you can also calm the fire with the GTAs with gut liver support. You could do your postbiotic metabolites by Dr. Ohira, your ProdromeGlia PC Plus for phosphatidylcholine, and your curcuminoid astaxanthin also will help quite significantly. And then your lifestyle interventions are to focus on sleep, movement, and low tox living. So avoid your seed oils, processed sugars, and plastic. You shouldn't have to say avoid eating plastic, but apparently we do. So inflammation is the invisible enemy of healing. And this patient scan shows that while the cancer is gone, the biochemical signals that allowed cancer to thrive are still active, okay? But by restoring the gut liver function and calming the immune terrain, we're going to put out the fire and keep it out. All right, so elongase 5 activity. This is the lipid rebuilding enzyme. It's really, really, really important. This is an enzyme that lives in your cells. It helps to extend short fatty acids into long chain fatty acids, and you need long chain fatty acids to build up plasmalogens, phosphatidylethylamines, and other structural lipids. It's like a construction crew, basically, and it takes the raw materials, like your beams and your pillars, and it uses it to build membranes, repair damage, and signal properly. In this patient, the elongase 5 activity is 93%, which is, is very, very strong enzymatic activity. And this is great news. So despite her history of breast cancer and the significant lipid depletion we've seen throughout the scan, she still has the metabolic machinery to rebuild. Her peroxisomal and mitochondrial gene expression is intact. She can still elongate and modify fatty acids into complex forms. And if we just provide her with the right substrates, she can restore cell membranes, mitochondrial health, and anti-lipid pools, which is really, really good. If you have really, really low elongase 5, like under 10%, you are at very, very high risk for breast cancer. And this is the only test that I know of that will measure directly your elongase 5 activity. So your prodrome for breast cancer is absolutely a low elongase 5. Fortunately, in this patient, she has a very strong elongase 5, so we're very happy about that. So many people finish chemo and radiation with no capacity to rebuild. Their lipid systems are flatlined, but in this patient, her elongase 5 is very active. She has a powerful potential for recovery. Either way, even if it was low, we have ways to build up elongase 5. And you're looking at your prodrome neuro, your prodrome glia, exercise, fasting, mitochondrial activators like CoQ10, berberine, and red light therapy, and avoiding toxins that suppress elongase 5. Again, plastics, seed oils, pesticides, and chronic stress downregulate this enzyme. And then you just want to build in antioxidants and detox support. So bottom line here, think of elongase 5 as your body's lipid rebuilding capacity. In this patient, that capacity is strong, which is incredibly encouraging. And with the right protocols, she's not just surviving post-cancer, she's ready to regenerate and thrive. All right, peroxisomal function. Again, we've seen some of these numbers. This is pulling it in as a summary. Peroxisomes are small organelles inside of your cells and play a massive role in making plasmalogens and complex lipids, detoxifying hydrogen peroxide and reactive oxygen species, regulating fatty acid metabolism, and supporting mitochondrial function. So in short, peroxisomes are lipid engineers, and they're the cleanup crew of your cells. So what does this mean? What is this talking about? So this is a classic profile of peroxisomal insufficiency. The body is not making or maintaining plasmalogens. So especially the ethanolamine-based plasmalogens that protect the brain, the immune system, and the mitochondria. DHA and EPA incorporation in these lipids is low, meaning that the membranes lack these anti-inflammatory and antioxidative properties. The peroxisomes may be functioning, but they're overwhelmed or under-resourced, likely due to stress, toxins, and oxidation. So your peroxisomes produce plasmalogens while they scavenge reactive oxygen species and stabilize mitochondrial membranes. And when they're under functioning, the terrain shifts towards mutation, chronic inflammation, and an immune dysfunction, which can allow cancer to thrive. That's what we don't want. And importantly, peroxisomal decline begins years before symptoms. So this makes it a very, very powerful predictor marker on the scan. So how do we rebuild peroxisomal function? Prodrome neuro, prodrome glia, BDMC, and some your peroxisomal biogenesis with exercise, fasting, berberine, astaxanthin, looking at clearing out environmental toxins. You can do that with glutathione, alpha lipoic acid, your push catch binder system to lower the oxidative burden. We use EBU too, which can help remove plastics and other environmental toxins and viruses. reducing stress on the system, avoiding overloading the methylation, which diverts resources from peroxisome. So having a fully functioning operational methylation system means that it's not going to pull or take resources from peroxisomes. So that methylation system is really important. Your B methylated vitamins and your betaine, really, really important. Um, in this scenario, the patient's peroxisomes are underperforming, which is one of the earliest warning signs of cancer terrain dysfunction, but we can fix it. And that is exactly what the Prodrome series was designed to do. Now, cholesterol transport, what your lipids are really telling you, cholesterol is essential. It's a backbone of hormone synthesis, cell membrane, brain functioning, and it's transported by your lipoproteins, which are HDL and LDL. Okay. So cholesterol, we like to see total cholesterol between 200 and 250 because that's where the studies showed the best outcomes occurred. And what this scan means, so her triglycerides, they're not here, but they were 58. That was seen elsewhere on the scan. But the HDL is excellent, so we're very, very happy with this. This tells us that her body is good at reverse cholesterol transport, which is the process of clearing out old oxidized lipids from the tissues. The triglycerides are a little bit on the low side. We like them 60 to 90. At 58, it's just barely low. But it is a sign of insulin sensitivity, a good mitochondrial oxidation. Her body isn't storing fat in the bloodstream, so that's good. The LDLs are ideal. We want these greater than 125. We just need to make sure that they are not they don't get oxidized, because it's not the LDLs that are the problem. It's oxidated phospholipids that are on the LDLs that can cause problems. So this is pretty much a really good cholesterol transport profile. It's protective. And I would rather her err on the side of having a higher cholesterol than a lower cholesterol, which is associated with cancer recurrence. Cholesterol is required for hormone repair, especially if she's not on HRT, which she's not. And after chemo, the liver often recycles cholesterol because it's trying to rebuild cell membranes, which is why you have a higher LDL. If methylation and phosphatidylcholine are low, as they are in this patient, the body struggles to clear cholesterol efficiently, which can lead to a buildup without necessarily meaning disease. In short, this is not hyperlipidemia, it's basically lipid compensation. So how do we optimize cholesterol transport? We're going to use our Prodrome products. Prodrome Glia will enhance lipid transport and bioflow. It'll also replenish phosphatidylcholine and plasmalogens, which are used to package cholesterol. Optimize methylation with B12, your methylated B12, methylfolate, trimethylglycerine, and phosphatidylcholine from your Prodrome Glio PC+. And we're going to use antioxidants like astaxanthin, alpha-lipoic acid, and tocotrienols, which is vitamin E, to prevent LDL oxidation. Maintain a low CRP and your GTAs using the BDMC. Statins are not the answer in this case. We need to focus on lipid repair, not suppressing a single number. So cholesterol is not your enemy. Context is everything. The patient's numbers tell us that her body is trying to rebuild, not break down. And with proper membrane support, methylation balance, and anti-inflammatory strategies, we can support lipid transport and protect her from both recurrence and metabolic disease. All right, and finally, we have kidney function. So this is the last category on the ProdromeScan that filters toxins and metabolic waste, regulates electrolytes, supports detox and methylation by eliminating urea, uric acid, and excessive amino acids. So after after cancer treatment, your kidneys often take a hit from chemotherapy agents, dehydration, oxidative stress. In this patient, we saw a creatinine of 0.9, which is great, BUN of 18, and then uric acid of 4.3, which is on the lower side. A low uric acid, it corresponds with neurodegenerative diseases. So uric acid is a powerful water-soluble antioxidant that scavenges free radicals. So you want this to be between 5 and 6. It is like the human body's own vitamin C, and you can increase uric acid by taking extensive vitamin C. This patient would probably also feel really good after an NAD infusion because this is a proxy for NAD levels. So when you have a low uric acid, an NAD infusion feels amazing. If you have normal uric acid levels of 5 to 6 or greater, an NAD infusion probably you don't feel anything. It wouldn't make a difference to you. So all of these values are stable and show no obvious signs of kidney dysfunction, no retention of waste products, no hidden acid-base imbalances. But so they look good. All right. So the big question that we come back to is, will the cancer recur? And what we've learned in this ProdromeScan is that the environment that allowed the cancer to develop still exists. So we have severely depleted membrane lipids, especially your phosphatidylethanolamines and phosphatidylcholines. We have low plasmalogens, especially in the ethanolamine system. We have impaired lipid markers for poor energy and repair. We have suboptimal omega-3 status that's leading to unresolved inflammation. And we have a mild inflammation and methylation strain that's still present. What's working? Elongase 5 is strong. The body can rebuild if we give it the right tools, and the HDLs and the triglycerides suggest a metabolically stable base. So very exciting. Will the cancer recur? The risk remains unless the biochemical terrain is rebuilt. The scan doesn't predict recurrence, but it clearly shows that the root causes of membrane instability, detox impairment, and immune dysfunction are still present. So what we're doing next, how we're going to treat this patient. She needs to be on the Prodrome Neuro, Prodrome Glia, PC+, BDMC. We're going to support mitochondrial repair, detox, and anti-inflammatory pathways with N-acetylcysteine, alpha-lipoic acid, S-taxanthin, which we've mentioned a couple times, methylated Bs, a complex B vitamins, trimethylglycine, which is betaine. I think those were all of the antioxidants to take. Oh, vitamin E, so a tocotrienol would be very, very helpful in this patient. Let's see. And I think those are all of the supplements. And then the question is, well, how long does she need to be on these? As long as it's important for her, that's how long she needs to be on those, because the body needs to rebuild. It's definitely going to take a good year of this protocol to see changes. We'll see some changes immediately. But you really want to build this up. We would also encourage her to do red light therapy, PEMF-MET therapy on a daily basis. Infrared saunas would be good, exercise, fix the diet, all of these things that we've been told before. This is just giving you a powerful look at, if you don't do these things, what can happen. And the prodrome, what is the environment which allows disease and cancers to take hold. Okay, so we can look at your ProdromeScan. If you want me to read your ProdromeScan, you can certainly reach out to us online at phillywellnesscenter.com. You can text or call us, or go to gophillywellnesscenter.com/prodrome to purchase the scan and a consult. The scan itself, it is a blood draw, so we do need you to come into the office so that we can do a specialized blood draw, or we can send you to a lab near you with somebody who can do the specialized blood draw. And then it takes about 2 to 3 weeks for it to come back. So we can have an answer within a month. If you want this to get done, if you are a cancer survivor, you're going through cancer, you're worried about neurodegenerative diseases, this scan is unparalleled. You will not find information or these types of values anywhere. There's an advanced version of the scan too that's looking at antioxidative measures in more depth, as well as hormones. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff coming out in the ProdromeScan 2.0. So if you are interested in these things, please reach out to me. There's very few of us in the world, honestly, that can read these scans. So I'm happy to work with you and to help you to come up with a program that will help you to be healthy and rebuild, especially if you've been through any sort of chronic disease or you're worried about that happening. All right, guys, it was great to talk to you, and I'll bring another case study in a different video, and I will see you in the next video.